Who is firing? The voice cracked through the radio as sand erupted in geysers around the pinned operators. Hargrove pressed himself against the dune wall, his perfect uniform now stained with the blood of the man beside him. Another shot echoed across the basin, and a hostile gunman collapsed forward into the sand. Then another. Who is firing? Hargrove screamed again, but nobody answered because nobody knew. A figure rose from the dunes 300 yards east, a position no human should have occupied, a position his own scouts had cleared an hour ago. The shape moved like smoke given form, rifle already tracking the next target. And in that moment, Lieutenant Commander Vance Hargrove felt something he had not experienced in 15 years of special operations. He felt hunted. 72 hours earlier, Chief Petty Officer Ramona Delacroix sat behind a government-issued desk in Building 7 of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, watching her career die one requisition form at a time. Before we continue, drop a comment letting us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have seen someone unfairly pushed aside in your community, someone whose true value went unrecognized. The office smelled of industrial cleaner and forgotten ambition. Ramona initialed another equipment transfer document without reading it, because reading them would mean accepting that this was her life now. 18 months behind this desk. 18 months since Yemen. 18 months since the ambush that killed 4 of her teammates and somehow, impossibly, became her fault. She heard them before she saw them. The distinctive cadence of operators moving through the hallway, boots striking tile with the confidence of men who belonged. Ramona kept her eyes on the paperwork as they passed. She had learned that looking up invited either pity or contempt, and she had no use for either. A young sailor appeared at her door, struggling with a stack of folders that threatened to avalanche across the floor. He was maybe 20, fresh from school, and clearly lost. "I'm looking for personnel," he said. "They told me Building 7, but everything looks the same." Ramona studied him for a moment. The kid was sweating despite the air conditioning, his dress blues slightly rumpled, a small coffee stain on his left cuff he probably did not know was there. "Personnel moved to Building 12 6 months ago," she said. "But you do not want personnel. You want admin support, Building 4, second deck. They handle the paperwork you are carrying." The sailor blinked. "How do you know what paperwork I am carrying?" "Because you're holding transfer requests, and nobody hand delivers transfer requests to personnel anymore. It all goes through admin support now. Also, you have a coffee stain on your left cuff. Might want to address that before you meet with anyone official." The sailor looked down at his sleeve, then back at Ramona with something like awe. "Thank you, Chief. I have been walking around for an hour. Building 4. Tell them Delacroix sent you. They will take care of it." After he left, Ramona returned to her paperwork. The interaction had taken 43 seconds. It was the longest conversation she had with anyone in 3 days. The afternoon passed in silence. Ramona processed equipment requests, transfer authorizations, and supply chain updates. She approved requisitions for units she would never serve with, for operations she would never run, for missions that would happen without her. Each signature felt like another nail in a coffin she was building herself. At 1600 hours, the hallway filled with noise again. Different this time. The sharp laughter and easy confidence of men returning from the field. Ramona recognized the voices. Team 7, back from desert training. She kept her head down, but her ears tracked every word. And then she heard him. "Outstanding work out there, gentlemen." Lieutenant Commander Hargrove's voice carried the polish of command and the warmth of practiced charisma. "I am putting the whole squad in for commendations." That extraction drill was textbook. Ramona's pen stopped moving. She had not heard that voice in 18 months, not since he had testified at her inquiry, his words careful and damning. She had not seen his face since he had walked past her in the hallway afterward, not even glancing in her direction, as if she had already ceased to exist. Footsteps approached her door. Ramona forced herself to keep writing, to keep her hand steady, to give nothing away. Hargrove appeared in her doorway. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe she had just shrunk. His uniform was immaculate despite the desert training, his silver oak leaves gleaming, his smile perfectly calibrated for whatever audience he anticipated. But there was no audience here, just Ramona, and his smile did not waver at all. "Chief Delacroix," he said, the name dropping from his lips like something distasteful. "Still pushing paper, I see. Command really found a perfect use for your particular skill set." He did not wait for a response. He never did. Hargrove continued down the hallway, his laughter echoing off the walls as he rejoined his team. Ramona sat motionless for a long moment after he left. Her hand had started shaking sometime during the encounter, a fine tremor she could not control. She placed both palms flat on the desk and breathed. In her apartment that night, Ramona stood before the closet she never opened. Behind the winter coats and the dress uniforms wrapped in plastic lived the case she had not touched since they sent her home from Yemen. Black polymer, foam-lined, unremarkable. The kind of case that could hold camera equipment or musical instruments or anything innocent. It did not hold anything innocent. Ramona pulled the case from the closet and laid it on her bed. She ran her fingers along the latches but did not open them. Not yet. The rifle inside had been her partner for 11 years. The M40A6 had never failed her. She was the one who had failed. But tonight, something was different. The way Hargrove had looked at her, not with contempt or dismissal, with confidence. The confidence of a man whose secrets were safe. Ramona opened the case. The rifle lay nested in foam, exactly as she had left it. 18 months of silence. 18 months of exile. And somewhere in her gut, a certainty that had nothing to do with evidence and everything to do with instinct. Hargrove was planning something, and whatever it was, people were going to die. Ramona did not sleep that night. She sat on her bed with the rifle case open beside her, staring at the weapon she had sworn never to touch again. The M40A6 was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. Clean lines, perfect balance, a tool designed for one purpose and engineered to execute that purpose flawlessly. She had been flawless once too. At 0430, she gave up on rest and drove to the base. The gate guard barely glanced at her credentials. Administrative personnel came and went at odd hours, and nobody cared enough to question it. That was the advantage of invisibility. Nobody watched what nobody valued. The records office was empty at this hour. Ramona used her access credentials to pull the after-action reports from Yemen. The files were heavily redacted, black bars covering names and locations, and anything that might reveal operational details. But she knew what those black bars hid. She had lived it. The official narrative was simple. Chief Petty Officer Delacroix had failed to properly assess the threat environment. Her team had walked into an ambush that intelligence should have predicted. For operators dead, one survivor. The survivor was blamed because the dead could not defend themselves. Ramona scrolled through the testimony transcripts. Hargrove's statement was clinical, precise, devastating. He described a breakdown in communication, a failure to follow protocol, a sniper who had prioritized her position over her team. Every word was technically accurate. Every word was a lie. She had not failed to assess the threat. She had assessed it perfectly. Her warnings had been ignored, and the coordinates Hargrove had provided for extraction had led them directly into the kill zone. But proving that would require evidence she did not have. Hargrove had made sure of that. Ramona closed the files and opened the current operation schedule. Routine training exercises, equipment certifications, deployment preparations. Nothing unusual. Then she found it. Advanced Desert Warfare Exercise. Imperial Sand Dunes. Team 7. Exercise Commander. LCDRV. Hargrove. The exercise was scheduled to begin in 72 hours. Ramona read the operational parameters with growing unease. Live fire authorization. Opposition force provided by external contractor. Communications blackout for realism. Limited extraction windows. Every element was defensible on its own. Together, they painted a picture that made her stomach clench. She dug deeper into the contractor files. Meridian Security Solutions. The name meant nothing to her, so she searched the database. Meridian had been founded 18 months ago. Their personnel roster was conspicuously thin on verifiable backgrounds. Their previous contracts were all classified or redacted. 18 months. The same amount of time since Yemen. The timing could not be coincidence. Ramona copied the relevant files to a secure drive and left the records office as the sun began to rise over Coronado. The next morning, she returned to her desk and her paperwork and her slow suffocation. But now she watched. She listened. She tracked the movements of Team 7 as they prepared for the desert exercise. Petty Officer Second Class Yuki Tanaka appeared at her door just after lunch. He was young, maybe 26, with the eager energy of an operator who had not yet learned that enthusiasm could get you killed. Chief Delacroix, he said, hovering at the threshold like he needed permission to enter. Do you have a minute? Ramona gestured to the chair across from her desk. Tanaka sat, then immediately stood again, too restless to stay still. I wanted to ask you about Yemen, he said. Ramona felt her expression freeze. What about it? Tanaka shifted his weight from foot to foot. I read the after-action report. Part of my training, studying past operations. And He paused, struggling with the words. It does not make sense to me. Your record before that mission was spotless. 14 years of service, 3 deployments, 0 incidents. And then suddenly you make every mistake in the book on one operation. It does not add up. Ramona studied him carefully. Tanaka was too new to know the politics, too green to understand the danger of asking these questions. But he was also observant enough to spot the inconsistencies that everyone else had chosen to ignore. What exactly are you asking me, Petty Officer? Tanaka met her eyes. I am asking if the official story is true. The question hung in the air between them. Ramona could shut this down with a word. She could tell him to forget it, to follow the chain of command, to accept the narrative that everyone else had accepted. That would be the safe choice, the smart choice. But safe and smart had gotten 4 of her teammates killed. The official story, Ramona said slowly, is the only story that exists on paper. I suggest you remember that. Tanaka's face fell. He nodded and turned to leave. Ramona spoke again before he reached the door. You were assigned to the desert exercise, are you not? He turned back. Yes, Chief. It is my first major training op. Be careful out there, she said. The desert has a way of revealing things that people want to stay hidden. Tanaka frowned, clearly not understanding. But he nodded anyway and left her office. Ramona sat alone with the weight of what she had not said. Tanaka was walking into something dangerous. They all were. And she was sitting behind a desk, signing requisition forms, while Hargrove assembled the pieces of whatever game he was playing. That evening, she found Senior Chief Tobias Renard waiting by her car in the parking lot. He was older than she remembered, more gray at his temples, deeper lines around his eyes. They had served together in Yemen. He had been one of the few who had not turned his back on her afterward. You should not be looking into Meridian security, he said without preamble. Ramona stopped 3 feet from her car. How do you know what I am looking into? Because I have been looking into them too. Renard's voice was low, urgent. For 6 months. And every time I get close to something, the files disappear. The sources dry up. Someone is protecting them. Hargrove. Renard did not confirm or deny. What I know is that you are drawing attention. Attention that could get you more than a desk assignment. He stepped closer. Walk away, Ramona. Whatever happened in Yemen, whatever is happening now, it is bigger than you. Bigger than both of us. Ramona looked at the man who had once called her sister. There are 12 operators going into those dunes in 3 days. Tanaka is 26 years old. Did you know that? He has a mother in Sacramento who sends him care packages every month. Renard closed his eyes. Do not do this. Yemen is going to happen again. I can feel it. And I'm not going to watch from behind a desk while more good people die. She unlocked her car and climbed inside. Renard stood in the parking lot, watching her drive away, his face carved with the expression of a man who wanted to help but could not find the courage. That night, Ramona sat on her apartment floor with a rifle broken down in front of her. Her hands remembered the movements, even if her confidence did not. Bolt, barrel, stock, scope. Each component cleaned and inspected and reassembled with mechanical precision. She was going to the desert, and she was going to find out what Hargrove was hiding, even if it destroyed whatever was left of her career. The range at Camp Michael Monsoor sat empty in the pre-dawn darkness. Ramona had chosen this location specifically because nobody used it before 0600. The facility was reserved for basic qualifications, beneath the dignity of operators who had access to better resources, which made it perfect for a disgraced sniper who officially did not exist. She set up at the 300-yard line and settled into a prone position. The M40A6 felt foreign in her hands, heavier than she remembered, the stock pressing against her shoulder like an accusation. 18 months since she had fired a weapon. 18 months since she had trusted herself to take a shot. Ramona controlled her breathing and found her sight picture. The target was a standard silhouette, center mass marked with concentric rings. An easy shot, a shot she had made 10,000 times. She squeezed the trigger. The round struck 2 feet left of center, barely clipping the target's edge. Ramona cycled the bolt and fired again. This time the shot went high, missing the silhouette entirely. The third round was worse. The fourth was an embarrassment. She lowered the rifle and pressed her forehead against the cool polymer stock. Her hands were trembling, not from cold, not from fatigue, from something deeper, something that had taken root in Yemen and grown in the 18 months since. She was afraid. The fear was not of missing. The fear was of hitting, of taking a life, of being responsible for the consequences that followed a trigger pull. In Yemen, her skills had failed to save her team. What made her think they could save anyone now? Ramona forced herself to reload. She fired another magazine, then another. The shots improved marginally, but marginally was not good enough. Marginally would get people killed. She was packing up her gear when she noticed the figure standing at the edge of the range. Master Chief Warren Bledsoe was a legend at Coronado, the kind of senior enlisted whose reputation preceded him by decades. He had been in the teams before Ramona was born. He watched her now with an expression that revealed nothing. Ramona waited for him to speak. He did not. After a long moment, he simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the morning mist like he had never been there at all. She did not know what to make of the encounter. Bledsoe had no reason to be at this range, no reason to watch her fail, unless he knew something, unless he was part of whatever machinery was protecting Hargrove, or unless he was something else entirely. Ramona returned to her apartment and sat with her failure. The rifle lay on her bed, cleaned and oiled and utterly useless in her current state. She had planned to save 12 operators from walking into a trap. She could not even hit a stationary target at 300 yards. The thought of giving up crossed her mind. She could destroy the file she had copied, forget what she had learned about Meridian security, go back to her desk and her paperwork, and her slow fade into nothing. Hargrove would execute whatever plan he had designed. People would die, and Ramona would read about it in an after-action report. Another tragedy she had failed to prevent. She picked up the photo from her nightstand. Her faces smiled back at her. Kowalski, Becky, Fernandez, Chun, her team, her family. Dead because she had trusted the wrong coordinates. Dead because Hargrove had made sure they were in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. They deserved better than her surrender. Ramona returned to the range that afternoon. She fired until her shoulder ached and her eyes burned and her hands steadied through sheer repetition. The shots improved. Not perfect, but better. Muscle memory fighting its way back through the fog of doubt. At 1900 hours, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just coordinates and a time. She stared at the screen for a long moment, instinct warring with paranoia. The coordinates pointed to a location in the Imperial Sand Dunes. The time was the exact window when Team 7 would be in the most exposed position of their exercise. Someone else knew. Someone else was watching. Ramona saved the message and did not respond. She could not trust anonymous sources, but she also could not ignore information that might save lives. The next morning, Renard found her at the range. He looked like he had not slept, dark circles under his eyes, his uniform less crisp than usual. I made some calls, he said. People I trust. People who owe me favors. And Meridian Security is dirty. Their personnel are former contractors with black marks on their records. Dishonorable discharges, conduct violations, the kind of men who could not cut it in legitimate outfits. He paused, and Hargrove has been in contact with their leadership for months. Private communications. Off the books. Ramona felt the pieces clicking into place. He is building a kill team. Renard did not argue. If you were right, then those operators are walking into an ambush. Not a training exercise. An execution. Why would Hargrove kill his own men? Renard shook his head. I do not know. Maybe someone on that team knows something. Maybe it is about Yemen. Maybe it is about something else entirely. But I know this. If you go into those dunes alone, you are not coming back. Ramona met his eyes. Then help me. The silence stretched between them. Renard was weighing his career against his conscience, his safety against his duty. She watched the battle play out across his face and did not rush him. Some decisions could not be forced. I cannot go with you, he finally said, but I can give you what you need to succeed. He handed her a folded paper. Exercise routes, comms frequencies, opposition force positions, everything I could pull without triggering alerts. Ramona took the paper. It was more than she had hoped for. It was not enough to guarantee success, but it was a chance. Thank you, Tobias. Do not thank me. Renard's voice was heavy with something she could not name. Just bring them home. He walked away without looking back. Ramona watched him go, then unfolded the paper and began to memorize every detail. In 48 hours, Team 7 would enter the desert, and she would be waiting for them. Ramona left Coronado at 0300 on the morning of the exercise. She drove east through the darkness, her rifle case secured in the trunk, her ghillie suit packed beside it. The Imperial Sand Dunes were 4 hours away, and she needed to be in position before dawn. The desert swallowed the highway as civilization fell away behind her. She passed through El Centro without stopping, then turned north toward Glamis. The dunes rose against the horizon like frozen waves, their crests sharp against the lightning sky. She had trained here years ago, knew the terrain well enough to navigate by instinct. That knowledge might be the only advantage she had. She parked her vehicle in a maintenance lot 3 miles from the exercise area and continued on foot. The sand shifted beneath her boots, each step requiring twice the effort of solid ground. By the time she reached the observation ridge overlooking the bowl, the sun was cresting the eastern dunes and Team 7 was assembling at their insertion point. Ramona settled into position and raised her binoculars. 12 operators moved through their pre-mission checks with practiced efficiency. She identified Tanaka near the front of the formation, his weapon held with the careful grip of someone still learning to trust their training. The older operators clustered in groups of 2 and 3, their body language relaxed but alert. And there was Hargrove. He stood apart from the others, speaking into his satellite phone with his back turned to the team. His posture was wrong. Too stiff, too controlled, the stance of a man managing multiple concerns at once. Ramona adjusted her scope and tried to read his lips, but the angle was bad and the distance too great. The phone call ended. Hargrove pocketed the device and addressed his team with the easy confidence she remembered from Coronado. His words did not carry across the distance, but she could see the operators nodding, preparing to move out. Whatever he had told them, they believed it. Ramona shifted her attention to the surrounding dunes. Renard's intel had placed the Meridian contractors at 4 positions around the bowl. She scanned each location methodically, searching for signs of concealment. There, a slight irregularity in the sand pattern on the western ridge, the kind of disturbance that came from someone digging in and covering their tracks. She marked the position and continued scanning. Second position on the northern slope. Third, near the extraction point. Fourth, covering the southern approach. For positions. But Renard's intel had mentioned 8 contractors. Ramona swept her scope across the terrain again, slower this time. The missing 4 had to be somewhere. Hargrove would not leave gaps in his kill zone, unless the gaps were intentional, unless the missing contractors were mobile, meant to close the trap once the team was committed. She found them 20 minutes later, a cluster of figures moving along a parallel ridge, staying low, using the terrain for concealment. They were good, professional. But Ramona had spent 14 years learning to see what others missed. 8 contractors, 4 fixed positions, for mobile hunters, and 12 operators walking directly into the center of the formation. The exercise began at 0800. Team 7 moved out in tactical formation, Tanaka on point, the more experienced operators covering flanks and rear. Hargrove positioned himself at the back of the column, away from the kill zone, close to the extraction route. Ramona shadowed them from the parallel ridge, maintaining a distance of 400 yards. The ghillie suit she had assembled from desert materials broke up her silhouette against the sand. She moved only when the wind kicked up, using the swirling dust to mask her transitions between positions. The team entered the bowl at 0930. The basin was a natural amphitheater, ringed by high dunes on 3 sides with a single exit point to the south. Perfect terrain for training. Perfect terrain for an ambush. Ramona watched the contractors shift in their positions. The fixed teams were tracking the operators through their scopes. The mobile team had circled around to block the southern exit. The trap was closing. She checked her rifle one final time. The M40A6 was zeroed for 400 yards. Her hands were steady now, the trembling from the practice range replaced by cold focus. Whatever doubts she carried, she could not afford them here. A burst of static crackled across the emergency frequency she was monitoring. Hargrove's voice came through, calm and professional. Opposition force, you're cleared hot. Engage it well. Make it look realistic. The response came from someone with a flat, accentless voice. Copy that. Engaging now. Ramona's blood went cold. Cleared hot was not training terminology. Cleared hot meant live ammunition. Cleared hot meant kill authority. The first shots erupted before she could react. Sand geysers exploded around Team 7 as the contractors opened fire from all 4 fixed positions. An operator on the left flank went down, clutching his shoulder, his scream carrying across the basin. Training rounds did not make men scream like that. The team scattered, seeking cover behind the inadequate dunes in the basin floor. Tanaka had dropped flat, his weapon up, scanning for targets he could not see. The older operators were shouting commands, trying to organize a response to an attack that made no tactical sense. Hargrove was already moving toward the southern exit, away from his team, away from the kill zone he had designed. Ramona settled her crosshairs on the nearest contractor. The man was focused on the operators below, completely unaware of the sniper on his flank. She controlled her breathing, found the stillness between heartbeats, and squeezed the trigger. The contractor dropped without a sound. She cycled the bolt and acquired the second target. Another squeeze, another body falling into the sand. The remaining contractors were reacting now, trying to identify the new threat. But Ramona was already moving, displacing to a secondary position before they could triangulate her location. The radio exploded with confusion. Someone was screaming about a shooter on the ridge. Someone else was calling for extraction, and cutting through all of it, Hargrove's voice, sharp with an emotion she had never heard from him before. Who is firing? Who is firing? Ramona rose from the dunes 300 yards east of her original position. She keyed her radio to the emergency frequency and spoke the words that would change everything. Friendlies in the bowl, this is Ghost. You have hostiles with live ammunition. This is not a drill. Rally on my tracers. Then she fired a phosphorus round into the sky and waited for the chaos to find her. The phosphorus tracer arced across the morning sky like a fallen star. Ramona was already moving before it reached its apex, displacing to a tertiary position she had identified during her initial survey. The contractors would be adjusting now, redirecting their attention from the trapped operators to the unexpected threat on their flank. She needed them focused on her. Every second they spent hunting a ghost was a second the team could use to regroup. Gunfire echoed across the basin as the contractors split their fire between the operators and her last known position. Ramona crawled through a shallow depression, her ghillie suit dragging through the sand, her rifle cradled against her chest. The heat was already brutal, the morning sun turning the dunes into a furnace. Sweat soaked through her base layer and stung her eyes. She reached her new position and rose just enough to acquire targets. The fixed contractor teams had abandoned their concealed posts, forced to move by her intervention. Two of them were advancing toward the ridge where her tracer had originated. The other two were maintaining suppressive fire on the operators below. Ramona sighted on the nearest moving contractor and fired. The round caught him center mass, and he crumpled into the sand. His partner dove for cover, screaming something into his radio. 3 down, 5 remaining. Privalkov. The return fire was immediate and accurate. Rounds snapped past her head, close enough that she felt the pressure waves against her cheek. These men were professionals. Not the best she had faced, but good enough to kill her if she made a mistake. She rolled left and slid down the backside of the dune, using gravity to accelerate her displacement. The sand grabbed at her clothing, filled her mouth, blinded her momentarily. She spat and blinked and kept moving. The radio traffic was chaos. The operators were shouting overlapping commands, trying to establish order in a situation that had no order. She heard Tanaka's voice cutting through the noise, younger and higher than the others, but surprisingly steady. I have eyes on the southern ridge. 2 hostiles moving to flank, requesting guidance. No response from Hargrove. Of course not. He was already gone, slipping away while his team fought and died. Ramona keyed her radio again. Tanaka, this is Ghost. Hold your position and maintain visual on those hostiles. Help is coming. A pause. Then Tanaka's voice, confused but trusting. Copy, Ghost. Holding position. She climbed the next dune and scanned for the mobile contractor team. They had been circling to block the southern exit, but her intervention had disrupted their timing. She spotted them 200 yards to her left, for figures moving in tactical formation toward the basin. Too far for a reliable shot. Too close to ignore. Ramona made a decision. She broke from cover and sprinted across the exposed ridge, trading concealment for speed. If she could reach the rocky outcropping at the basin's edge, she would have a clear line of fire on the mobile team and partial cover from the fixed positions. The contractors saw her immediately. Rounds kicked up sand around her feet as she ran. Something tugged at her sleeve, and she felt a hot line of pain across her left bicep. She ignored it and kept running. 30 yards. 20. 10. She dove behind the rocks as a burst of automatic fire shattered the stone above her head. Fragments rained down on her back and shoulders. She pressed herself flat and took a breath. The wound on her arm was superficial, a graze that had torn fabric and skin but missed anything important. She would deal with it later. Right now, she had 4 contractors advancing on her position and 5 operators counting on her to keep them alive. Ramona rose and fired twice in rapid succession. 1 contractor fell. The others scattered, seeking cover in the undulating terrain. She had bought herself seconds, nothing more. Below her, the operators were finally moving with purpose. The senior members had established a base of fire, suppressing the remaining fixed contractor positions while the junior operators dragged their wounded teammate toward better cover. They were adapting, overcoming the initial shock of betrayal. But they were still trapped in the basin, and the contractors were still closing in. Ramona scanned for Hargrove. She found him 300 yards south, moving alone toward the extraction point. He had abandoned his team completely, leaving them to die while he escaped to spin whatever story would protect him. She could take the shot. At this range, with her current position, she had a clean line on his center mass. One squeeze of the trigger, and Vance Hargrove would never hurt anyone again. Her finger tightened on the trigger and stopped. Killing Hargrove would not save the operators. It would not expose the truth. It would make her exactly what the official narrative claimed she was. A rogue sniper who had lost control. A murderer. She needed him alive. She needed him to confess. Ramona released the trigger and redirected her aim toward the advancing contractors. 2 more shots, 2 more bodies dropping into the sand. The remaining contractor from the mobile team broke and ran, abandoning his mission in the face of an enemy he could not locate. The fixed positions had gone silent, either dead or retreating. The immediate threat was neutralized. Ramona keyed her radio. Friendlies in the bowl, this is Ghost. Hostiles are down or withdrawing. Rally at the northern ridge for extraction. The senior operator's voice came back, gruff and suspicious. Who the hell are you? Someone who just saved your life. Move now. We do not have much time before reinforcements arrive. She watched them gather their wounded and begin the climb toward her position. Tanaka was helping support the injured operator, his young face set with determination. The others moved with the wary alertness of men who had just survived an ambush they did not understand. Ramona stayed in position, covering their movement, scanning for any remaining threats. The contractors were gone, dead or fled. Hargrove had disappeared over the southern ridge. But this was not over. He still had his radio. He still had his connections. And he would be calling in every favor he had to spin this situation in his favor. Ramona checked her ammunition. 7 rounds remaining. 1 wounded arm. And a team of operators who did not know whether to trust her or arrest her. The real fight was just beginning. The operators reached the northern ridge in a ragged column, their wounded teammates supported between 2 of the larger men. Ramona watched them approach through her scope, tracking their movements until she was certain no contractors had infiltrated the group. Then she rose from her position and stepped into view. 11 rifles swung toward her instantly. Easy, she said, keeping her hands visible, her own rifle slung across her back. I am the one who just pulled your asses out of that kill zone. The senior operator, a weathered chief with salt and pepper stubble, kept his weapon trained on her chest. Identify yourself. Chief Petty Officer Ramona Delacroix, Scout Sniper, currently assigned to administrative duty at Coronado. Recognition flickered across several faces. The disgraced sniper from Yemen, the one who got her team killed. She could see them processing, trying to reconcile the official narrative with the woman who had just saved their lives. Tanaka lowered his weapon first. That is her. I talked to her 3 days ago. She warned me to be careful. The senior chief did not lower his rifle. You were supposed to be behind a desk. What are you doing in the middle of our training exercise? Ramona met his eyes without flinching. Your training exercise was an execution. Those contractors were using live ammunition on orders from Lieutenant Commander Hargrove. He set this up to kill all of you. Silence. The kind of silence that falls when reality shifts beneath your feet and everything you thought you knew becomes suspect. That is insane, one of the operators said. Hargrove is our commanding officer. Why would he want us dead? Ramona did not have time to explain everything. She gave them the short version. 18 months ago in Yemen, my team walked into an ambush. We were given bad coordinates. Coordinates that came from Hargrove. 4 operators died. I was blamed. She paused, letting the words sink in. Someone on your team knows something. Or Hargrove thinks they do. Either way, he decided it was easier to eliminate all of you than risk exposure. The senior chief finally lowered his weapon. His expression had shifted from suspicion to something more complex. A mixture of doubt and dawning horror. Kowalski, he said quietly. Mike Kowalski was on your team in Yemen. Ramona felt the name like a punch to the chest. Yes. He was my brother-in-law. The chief's voice was barely above a whisper. When the report came out, I believed it. I believed you got him killed through negligence. His jaw tightened. But Mike wrote me a letter before that mission. Said something felt wrong. Said the intel was too clean, too perfect. He did not trust it. The revelation hung in the air between them. Ramona had carried the weight of Mike Kowalski's death for 18 months. She had accepted the blame because fighting it seemed impossible. And now his brother-in-law was standing in front of her, learning that everything he had believed was a lie. I am sorry, she said. For Mike. For all of them. I tried to warn command about the intel. Nobody listened. The chief nodded slowly. My name is Erickson, and I think you just earned the right to explain what the hell we do next. Before Ramona could respond, the radio crackled with a transmission that made her blood freeze. Attention all stations. This is Lieutenant Commander Hargrove. Hargrove's voice was calm, controlled, the practiced tone of a man who had prepared for this moment. My training exercise has been attacked by a disturbed former operator. Chief Petty Officer Ramona Delacroix has gone rogue. She has killed several of my contracted opposition force personnel. I am requesting immediate QRF to my location. She is armed and extremely dangerous. The operators stared at their radios in disbelief. Ramona forced herself to think past the adrenaline. Hargrove was controlling the narrative. By the time the quick reaction force arrived, he would have a story ready. Rogue sniper attacks, training exercise, kills contractors, threatens operators, had to be neutralized. It was elegant. It was devastating. And it would work unless she found a way to stop it. How long until QRF arrives? She asked. Erickson checked his watch. 90 minutes. Maybe less if they push the birds hard. 90 minutes to find Hargrove, force a confession, and prove her innocence. 90 minutes before she became the most wanted person in the Navy. The wounded operator groaned, and one of his teammates adjusted the field dressing on his shoulder. The bullet had gone clean through, missing bone and arteries, but he needed proper medical attention soon. We need to split up, Ramona said. Most of you stay here with the wounded. Establish a defensive position and wait for extraction. Tell the QRF exactly what happened. The contractors attacked with live rounds. You defended yourselves. And what about Hargrove? Tanaka asked. Ramona checked her remaining ammunition. I'm going to find him, and I'm going to make him tell the truth. Erickson stepped forward. You're not going alone. Hargrove is a trained operator. He knows this terrain, and he is desperate enough to kill his own men. He needs to be taken alive to expose whatever network is protecting him. Ramona started to argue, then stopped. Erickson was right. Hargrove would not surrender easily, and she was already wounded and low on ammunition. Pride was a luxury she could not afford. One more person, she said. Anyone else increases our profile and slows us down. Tanaka stepped forward immediately. I'm going. Erickson shook his head. You're too green, kid. With respect, Chief, I'm the fastest runner on this team, and I have the best eyes. Tanaka's voice was steady, more confident than Ramona had heard before. And Chief Delacroix saved my life. I'm not letting her hunt that bastard alone. Ramona studied the young operator. She saw the fear beneath his determination, the awareness that he was volunteering for something that might get him killed. But she also saw something else, the kind of stubborn courage that could not be taught. He comes with me, she said. Erickson, hold this position. When QRF arrives, tell them everything. And if we are not back in 90 minutes, assume the worst. Erickson nodded grimly. Bring him back alive, Delacroix. I want to watch him answer for what he did. Ramona turned south, toward the ridge where Hargrove had disappeared. Tanaka fell into step beside her, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning the dunes. The hunt had begun. The southern dunes stretched before them like an ocean frozen midwave. Ramona moved in a low crouch, her eyes reading the sand for signs of passage. Hargrove had a 15-minute head start, but he was alone and moving fast. Fast meant careless. Careless meant tracks. She found a first boot print 50 yards from the basin's edge. Deep heel strike, push sand at the toe. A man running, not walking. She adjusted their course and picked up the pace. Tanaka matched her stride for stride, his breathing controlled despite the brutal heat. He was young, but he was fit, and he had the sense to stay quiet when silence mattered. Ramona found herself grateful for his presence in a way she had not expected. They crested a ridge, and she held up a fist. Tanaka froze instantly. Below them, a shallow valley carved between two massive dunes. Hargrove's tracks led directly into it, but the valley was too exposed. Too perfect for an ambush. He knows we are following, Ramona said quietly. He is trying to draw us into a kill box. Tanaka studied the terrain. We could go around. Add maybe 10 minutes, but approach from the high ground. Ramona shook her head. We do not have 10 minutes to spare. But you are right about the high ground. She pointed to the eastern dune, a steep climb that would leave them exposed for 30 seconds, but give them a commanding view of the valley below. I go up. You stay here and cover me. If Hargrove takes a shot, you will see his muzzle flash. Put rounds on his position until I can get an angle. Tanaka nodded, his jaw tight. What if he hits you before I can react? Then you finish the mission. Ramona held his gaze. Get him alive if you can. Dead if you have to. But get him. Erickson and the others need that confession to clear their names, and to clear the names of the men who died in Yemen. She did not wait for a response. Ramona broke from cover and sprinted toward the eastern dune, her boots churning through sand that seemed to grab at every step. The climb was brutal, her thighs burning, her wounded arms screaming with each pump of her arms. No shots came. She reached the crest and dropped flat, scanning the valley through her scope. Empty. Hargrove's tracks continued through the center and up the far side, disappearing over the next ridge. He had not stopped to ambush them. He was still running. Ramona waved Tanaka forward. He scrambled up the dune to join her, barely winded despite the climb. He is heading for the extraction point, Tanaka said. If he reaches it first and calls in his own story before we can stop him, he will not reach it. Ramona was already moving, following the ridgeline instead of descending into the valley. From up here, she could see 3 ridges ahead, and on the farthest one, a small figure moving with desperate speed. Hargrove. She dropped to one knee and raised her rifle. The range was extreme, over 800 yards, with heat shimmer distorting the air between them. A nearly impossible shot under these conditions. Tanaka crouched beside her. Can you make it? Ramona watched Hargrove through her scope. He was moving erratically, zigzagging to throw off any pursuit. Smart, but predictable in his unpredictability. She tracked his pattern, calculating the rhythm of his movements. Not a kill shot, she said, but I can slow him down. She waited for the moment between heartbeats, the stillness that her instructors had drilled into her 14 years ago, the place where doubt did not exist, and a rifle became an extension of her will. She squeezed the trigger. The round crossed the distance in just over a second. It struck the sand 2 feet in front of Hargrove, exactly where she had aimed. He dove for cover, his momentum broken, his escape temporarily halted. Ramona was already moving. Come on. We close the distance while he is pinned. They ran along the ridgeline, eating up the ground between them and their target. Ramona's lungs burned, and her arm throbbed with every jarring step. She ignored both. Pain was temporary. Failure was permanent. They reached the second ridge as Hargrove broke from cover and continued his flight. He was closer now, maybe 500 yards. Still too far for a reliable shot, but close enough that he could not ignore them. He spun and fired twice. The rounds passed well wide, the desperation of a man who knew he was losing ground. Ramona did not return fire. She needed every remaining round for when it mattered. Tanaka suddenly grabbed her arm and pointed west. Dust cloud. Vehicle approaching. She followed his gaze. A plume of sand rose from behind a distant ridge, moving fast toward their position. Too small for QRF helicopters. Ground vehicle. Probably one of Hargrove's contingencies. Contractor reinforcement, she said. He must have called them when he realized we were tracking him. Tanaka's face tightened. How many? No way to know. One vehicle could mean 2 men or 10. The calculus had just changed. They were no longer hunting a single desperate man. They were caught between Hargrove ahead and unknown hostiles approaching from the flank. We have to end this now, Ramona said, before that vehicle arrives. She broke into a dead sprint, abandoning caution for speed. Tanaka matched her pace, his youth giving him reserves she no longer possessed. The gap between them and Hargrove shrank with every stride. 400 yards. 300. 250. Hargrove reached the crest of the final ridge and turned. This time his shots were more accurate, forcing Ramona and Tanaka to dive for cover behind a rocky outcropping. Sand exploded around them as Hargrove fired again and again. He is making a stand, Tanaka shouted over the gunfire. Must think the vehicle will reach him before we can. Ramona pressed herself against the rock and checked her ammunition. 5 rounds remaining. Tanaka had a full magazine, but his rifle was meant for closer engagements. At this range, she was their only option for precision fire. The vehicle was getting closer. She could hear the engine now, a high-pitched whine cutting through the desert air. Cover me, she said. Put rounds on his position. Keep his head down. Tanaka nodded and rose to a knee, firing controlled bursts toward the ridge. Ramona used the covering fire to displace, crawling 20 yards to a position that gave her a better angle on Hargrove's cover. She could see him now, pressed behind a boulder, reloading his weapon, his eyes fixed on the approaching dust cloud, waiting for salvation. Ramona settled her crosshairs on the boulder. She could not hit Hargrove directly from this angle, but she did not need to. She fired at the sand 3 feet to his left. The round kicked up a spray of grit that forced him to flinch right, exposing his shoulder for half a second. Her second shot was already in the air. The bullet struck Hargrove's rifle, shattering the stock and ripping the weapon from his hands. He screamed and clutched his fingers, disarmed but alive. Ramona rose from cover. "Drop to your knees and put your hands on your head. It is over, Vance." Hargrove stared at her with pure hatred. The vehicle crested the ridge behind him, sliding to a stop in a shower of sand. The door opened, and Master Chief Warrant Bledsoe stepped out, his face grim, a satellite phone pressed to his ear. Ramona kept her rifle trained on Hargrove, but her attention split to Bledsoe. The Master Chief stood beside the vehicle with the calm authority of a man who had seen everything the world could throw at him and remained unimpressed. Hargrove scrambled to his feet, cradling his injured hand. "Master Chief, thank God. This woman attacked my training exercise. She killed my contractors. She's completely unhinged." Bledsoe said nothing. He finished his phone call and slipped the satellite phone into his pocket. Then he walked toward Hargrove with slow, deliberate steps. "Master Chief, did you hear me?" Hargrove's voice pitched higher. "She needs to be detained immediately. I am the ranking officer here, and I am ordering you to." Bledsoe's fist connected with Hargrove's jaw before he could finish the sentence. The lieutenant commander dropped to the sand, stunned, blood trickling from his split lip. "You're not ordering anyone to do anything," Bledsoe said. "Not anymore." Ramona lowered her rifle slightly, still wary. "What are you doing here, Master Chief?" Bledsoe turned to face her. His expression softened, though it would never be called warm. "I have been investigating Hargrove for 6 months. Ever since a friend of mine named Kowalski died in Yemen under circumstances that did not add up." The name hit Ramona like a physical blow. "You knew Mike. We came up through BUD/S together. Class 197. Bledsoe's voice carried the weight of old grief. "When the official report blamed you, I did not buy it. Mike was too smart to follow a negligent sniper into an ambush, so I started digging." Hargrove spat blood into the sand and pushed himself to his knees. "This is insane. You cannot assault a superior officer based on conspiracy theories." Bledsoe ignored him. "I found a connection to Meridian Security 8 weeks ago. Shell company, funded through offshore accounts, staffed by contractors with burned credentials. Hargrove set it up right after Yemen. Used it to clean up loose ends and generate revenue on the side." "Revenue?" Tanaka said. "What kind of revenue?" "The kind that comes from selling operational intelligence to the highest bidder." Bledsoe's disgust was palpable. "Patrol routes, extraction schedules, asset identities. Hargrove has been running a side business, trading American lives for foreign cash." Ramona felt the pieces clicking into place. Yemen was not an accident. "No." Bledsoe shook his head. "Yemen was a product. Hargrove sold your team's position to an insurgent cell. The ambush was the delivery." The words should have destroyed her. 18 months of guilt, 18 months of believing she had failed her teammates through some mistake she could not identify. And now the truth. They had never had a chance. They had been betrayed by the man responsible for bringing them home. Instead of destruction, Ramona felt something else. Clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity. "Why this exercise?" she asked. "Why try to kill an entire team?" Bledsoe glanced at Hargrove, who had gone pale beneath his desert tan. "Because someone on Team 7 was getting close to the truth." Erickson started asking questions about his brother-in-law's death. Hargrove decided it was cleaner to eliminate the whole unit than risk exposure. "That is a lie," Hargrove snarled. "You have no proof. This is all speculation and the word of a disgraced sniper who—" "I have the recordings," Bledsoe said quietly. Hargrove froze. Bledsoe pulled a small digital device from his vest pocket. Senior Chief Renard has been feeding me information for months. When you gave the order to go hot on live ammunition this morning, he recorded the transmission. When you told Meridian to make it look like a training accident, he recorded that too. It is all here. Every word. Hargrove's face cycled through emotions. Denial, fear, calculation, desperation. Ramona watched him search for an exit and find none. Those recordings will never hold up, he said. Chain of custody issues. Une autorise de surveillance. My lawyers will tear them apart. Maybe. Bledsoe stepped closer to Hargrove. But that phone call I just finished was with Captain Ashford. She is on her way here with the QRF. And she is very interested in hearing your explanation for why 8 of your contracted personnel are dead in a training area that was supposed to have blank ammunition only. Hargrove's mouth opened and closed without sound. Ramona moved forward, her rifle now slung across her back. The immediate threat had passed. Hargrove was disarmed, exposed, and cornered. But she needed more than recordings and accusations. She needed him to confess. She crouched in front of him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. Vance, look at me. He met her eyes with the hatred of a man who had lost everything and blamed everyone but himself. You sold out your own people, Ramona said. You got 4 of my teammates killed, and let me take the blame. You tried to murder 12 more operators today. And for what? Money. Gambling debts. Hargrove flinched at the last words. A tell. A crack in the armor. That is what this is about, is it not? Ramona pressed harder. You got in over your head with the wrong people. Owed more than you could pay. And selling secrets was the only way out. You do not know anything, Hargrove whispered. I know that Mike Kowalski had a daughter. Ramona's voice was steady, but her eyes burned. She was 4 years old when he died. I know that Chin's wife was pregnant with twins. They never got to meet their father. I know that Fernandez was 3 months from retirement. He had a boat picked out, was going to sail down to Mexico with his brother. Stop. I know that Becky's mother still sends letters to his old address. Ramona leaned closer. She does not believe he is gone. She thinks if she keeps writing, he will come home. Hargrove's face crumpled. The arrogance, the charm, the practiced confidence. All of it fell away, revealing the broken man beneath. I did not have a choice, he said. His voice cracked. They were going to kill me. I owed them $2 million, and they were going to kill me. I just needed to make it stop. Ramona stood slowly. Tanaka had his phone out, recording every word. Bledsoe watched with the grim satisfaction of a man whose patience had finally paid off. In the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors began to build. Captain Ashford was coming, and Vance Hargrove had just confessed to everything. The helicopters came in low over the dunes, their rotors kicking up walls of sand that forced everyone to shield their eyes. 2 MH-60 Blackhawks touched down 50 yards from their position, and armed personnel poured out with weapons raised. Ramona did not move. She kept her hands visible and her posture non-threatening. This was the moment that would determine everything. If Ashford believed Hargrove's original story, Ramona would be in handcuffs within minutes. A figure emerged from the lead helicopter. Captain Noel Ashford was smaller than Ramona had expected, compact and precise in her movements. She walked toward them with the confidence of someone who commanded respect without demanding it. Her eyes swept the scene, taking in Hargrove on his knees, Bledsoe standing guard, Ramona and Tanaka waiting with their weapons slung. Master Chief, Ashford said. Report. Bledsoe straightened. Ma'am, Lieutenant Commander Hargrove orchestrated an attack on his own training exercise using contracted personnel armed with live ammunition. Chief Delacroix intervened and neutralized the threat. We have a full confession recorded on Petty Officer Tanaka's device, as well as corroborating audio captured by Senior Chief Renard at Coronado. Ashford's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. She turned to Hargrove. Lieutenant Commander, do you have anything to say? Hargrove looked up at her with the desperation of a drowning man. Captain, this is all a misunderstanding. These recordings are fabricated. Delacroix has been planning this since Yemen. She's trying to frame me for her own failures. Ashford studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to one of her accompanying officers. Commander Webb, take Lieutenant Commander Hargrove into custody. Read him his rights and secure him on the aircraft. Captain, Hargrove shouted as two officers hauled him to his feet. You cannot do this. My family has connections. My father served with Admiral. Your father's service record does not excuse treason. Ashford's voice cut through his protests like a blade. You will have your opportunity to defend yourself at court-martial. Until then, you will remain silent. They dragged Hargrove toward the helicopter. He continued shouting, his words becoming less coherent as the reality of his situation finally penetrated. Ramona watched him go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just a hollow space where 18 months of grief and guilt had lived. Ashford approached her. Chief Delacroix. Mung. Ramona stood at attention despite her exhaustion. The captain's eyes moved to the blood soaking through Ramona's sleeve. You are wounded. Superficial. I can wait for proper treatment. Ashford nodded slowly. I have been reviewing your file since Master Chief Bledsoe first brought his concerns to me 3 months ago. Your record before Yemen was exemplary. The official narrative never sat right with me, but I did not have enough evidence to reopen the investigation. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. What you did today was unauthorized, reckless, and in direct violation of your administrative restrictions. Ramona kept her expression neutral. Yes, ma'am. It also saved 12 lives and exposed a traitor who has been selling American blood for profit. Ashford allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. I'm not entirely sure how to reconcile those facts, but I suspect Jag will have opinions. I understand, ma'am. I am prepared to accept whatever consequences. Ashford turned to look at the dunes where the battle had taken place. We recovered 3 contractor bodies so far. The others fled into the desert. Border Patrol and local authorities are searching, but the terrain makes pursuit difficult. She looked back at Ramona. Your shooting was impressive, Chief. 800 yards in these conditions, and you managed to disarm Hargrove without killing him. That takes remarkable skill and even more remarkable restraint. Ramona thought about that moment on the ridge. The crosshairs on Hargrove's chest. The temptation to end it with a single squeeze. I needed him alive, Captain. Dead, he is a martyr. Alive, he is a witness. Ashford nodded. Smart. Difficult but smart. Tanaka stepped forward. Ma'am, permission to speak. Granted. Chief Delacroix did not just save us today. She gave us the truth about Yemen. Erickson is back at the rally point with the rest of the team. His brother-in-law died in that ambush. He deserves to know that Mike Kowalski was not killed by negligence. He was murdered by a man he trusted. Ashford's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I will make sure the families are informed properly. All of them. She gestured toward the helicopters. Chief Delacroix, you will accompany us back to Coronado. You need medical attention, and we need your full statement. This investigation is far from over. Ramona nodded. Before she moved, she turned to Bledsoe. Master Chief, why did you leave those coordinates for me? You could have handled this yourself. Bledsoe met her eyes. Because you deserved the chance to clear your own name. And because I needed to know if you still had the nerve to pull a trigger when it mattered. Did I pass? The ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. You will do. Ramona walked toward the helicopter, Tanaka falling into step beside her. The young operator had proven himself today in ways that training could never measure. He had faced his commanding officer's betrayal, fought beside a woman everyone told him to distrust, and kept his head when everything fell apart. You did good today, she told him. Tanaka shook his head. I followed your lead. You did all the hard parts. The hard part comes next. Ramona watched the desert scroll past as they lifted off. Testimony. Investigations. Lawyers. Hargrove's family will fight this with everything they have. Let them fight. Tanaka's voice was harder than she had heard before. We have the truth. That is all we need. Ramona wished she shared his certainty. But she had learned long ago that truth and justice were not always the same thing. Below them, the dunes stretched endlessly toward the horizon, keeping their secrets buried in the sand. The flight back to Coronado took 47 minutes. Ramona spent most of it staring out the window while a medic cleaned and bandaged her arm. The wound was shallow, just as she had assessed, but the medic insisted on a full workup once they landed. Hargrove sat in the rear of the aircraft, flanked by 2 armed guards. He had stopped talking after his initial protests, retreating into a silence that felt more dangerous than his earlier panic. Ramona knew that silence. It was the quiet of a man calculating his remaining options. They landed at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as the sun began its descent toward the Pacific. The base looked exactly as it had 3 days ago, but everything had changed. Ramona had left as a disgraced officer shuffling papers in a forgotten office. She returned as something else entirely. She was not sure what yet. Captain Ashford met them on the tarmac. Hargrove was escorted to the brig without ceremony, his dress whites now stained with sand and blood, his silver oak leaves suddenly meaningless. He did not look at Ramona as he passed. He did not look at anyone. "Chief Delacroix," Ashford said. "Medical first. Then we debrief." The base hospital processed her efficiently. X-rays confirmed no bone damage. The wound was irrigated, stitched, and wrapped in clean gauze. A doctor she did not recognize told her she was lucky and prescribed antibiotics she would probably forget to take. Renard was waiting outside the treatment room when she emerged. He looked older than he had 2 days ago. The weight of what he had done, the risk he had taken, showed in the lines around his eyes. "I got the recordings to Bledsoe," he said, just before Hargrove's people could intercept them. "It was closer than I would have liked." Ramona studied the man who had once been too afraid to act. "What changed your mind?" Renard was quiet for a moment. "You did. When you said Tanaka was 26 years old. When you said you would not watch from behind a desk while more good people died." He shook his head. "I have been behind a desk for too long. Watching, waiting, telling myself that someone else would handle it. And now I remember why I joined in the first place." His voice strengthened. "The investigation is going to need witnesses. People who can testify to what Hargrove did, how deep the corruption goes. I am not hiding anymore." Ramona put a hand on his shoulder. "Mike will be proud." Renard's eyes glistened briefly before he blinked it away. "Go. Ashford is waiting. I will be here when you need me." The debrief lasted 4 hours. Ramona sat in a sterile conference room with Ashford, Bledsoe, and 2 JAG officers whose names she immediately forgot. She walked them through everything. The suspicions about Yemen, the discovery of Meridian security, the anonymous coordinates, the decision to intervene. She left nothing out. Not the shots she had taken, not the men she had killed, not the moment she had Hargrove in her sights and chose to disarm him instead. When she finished, Ashford dismissed the JAG officers and sat back in her chair. "The legal situation is complicated," she said. "You disobeyed direct orders by leaving your administrative post. You conducted an unauthorized operation on a military training exercise. You killed 5 contracted personnel." Ramona nodded. She had known this was coming. "However," Ashford continued, "those contractors were engaged in an armed attack on Navy personnel using live ammunition. Your actions fall under defense of others, which is a recognized justification under the Uniform Code of Military Justice." She leaned forward. "More importantly, you exposed a traitor who has been selling classified information for at least 2 years. Our intelligence teams are already tracing Hargrove's contacts. The damage assessment is ongoing, but early indications suggest he compromised multiple operations across 3 theaters. Yemen, Ramona said quietly. Yemen, Ashford confirmed. And at least 4 other incidents that were previously attributed to bad luck or enemy intelligence. Hargrove was methodical. He covers tracks well. If you had not forced his hand today, he might have continued for years. The weight of that statement settled over Ramona. 4 teammates dead in Yemen. Others dead in operations she had never heard of. All because one man had valued money over loyalty. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild." Ashford stood and moved to the window, looking out at the base below. "The families of the operators lost in Yemen will be notified of the true circumstances. Their records will be amended. Their sacrifices will be honored properly." She turned back to Ramona. "And your record will be expunged. The reprimand, the administrative assignment, all of it. You will be officially cleared of any wrongdoing in the Yemen incident." Ramona had expected to feel relief at those words. Instead, she felt hollow, cleared, as if 18 months of exile could be erased with paperwork. What about Erickson and the others? She asked. They almost died today. They're being debriefed separately. Erickson has already requested permission to testify at Hargrove's court-martial. Ashford allowed herself a small smile. He was quite emphatic about it. And Tanaka, Petty Officer Tanaka, has submitted a formal statement supporting your actions. He also requested assignment to whatever unit you end up commanding. Ramona blinked. I'm not commanding anything. I'm a disgraced sniper on administrative duty. Ashford walked back to the table and sat across from her. That brings me to my next point. The Navy is establishing a new training program for advanced reconnaissance and counter-sniper operations. We need experienced operators to develop curriculum and train the next generation. She slid a folder across the table. I want you to lead it. Ramona stared at the folder without touching it. You are offering me a command. I am offering you a chance to do what you do best. Train snipers. Develop doctrine. Build something that outlasts both of us. Ashford's voice softened. You spent 18 months being punished for someone else's crimes. Let me give you 18 months to remember who you really are. The folder sat between them, heavy with possibility. Ramona thought about the rifle case in her apartment. The weapon she had sworn never to touch again. The skills she had been forced to reclaim in order to save lives that should never have been endangered. She thought about Tanaka's eager face. About Erickson's grief transforming into resolve. About Renard finally finding his courage. She reached for the folder. Ramona opened the folder and read the details of Captain Ashford's proposal. The program was ambitious. Advanced marksmanship, counter-sniper tactics, environmental adaptation, psychological resilience training. Everything she had learned in 14 years of service, distilled into a curriculum that would shape the next generation of operators. She closed the folder and looked up at Ashford. I need time to think about it. Ashford nodded. Take a week. The program does not launch for 2 months. But Delacroix, she paused, do not take too long. Opportunities like this do not come around twice. Ramona left the conference room and walked out into the California evening. The sun had set while she was being debriefed, and the base was quiet in that peculiar way military installations became after hours. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the rhythmic cadence of a training unit on a night run. She drove to her apartment on autopilot, her mind churning through everything that had happened. 48 hours ago, she had been a ghost, invisible and forgotten. Now she was being offered a command. The whiplash was disorienting. Her apartment felt different when she entered. The same sparse furniture, the same bare walls, the same sense of impermanence she had cultivated since Yemen. But something had shifted. The space no longer felt like a holding cell. It felt like a place she might actually leave. The rifle case sat on her bed where she had left it 3 days ago. Ramona ran her fingers along the polymer shell and thought about the shots she had taken in the desert. The rust had been real, but so had the muscle memory. 14 years of training did not disappear in 18 months. It just went dormant, waiting to be awakened. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. She opened it and found an address. Nothing else. No explanation, no context. But she recognized the location. The Naval Memorial Cemetery overlooking the Pacific. She drove there without hesitation. The cemetery was empty at this hour, the headstones casting long shadows in the moonlight. Ramona walked the familiar path to the section reserved for special operations personnel. She had not been here since the funerals, had not been able to face the stone markers that represented her failure. But they did not represent her failure. Not anymore. She found the 4 graves arranged in a row, just as she remembered. Kowalski, Chun, Fernandez, Becky, her team, her family, her brothers who had died not because of her negligence, but because of one man's greed. Ramona knelt in the grass before them. I found the truth, she said quietly. Hargrove sold us out. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. It does not bring you back. Nothing brings you back. But at least now everyone knows it was not my fault. She paused, listening to the distant crash of waves against the cliffs below. I spent 18 months hating myself, thinking I should have seen it coming, should have questioned the intel harder, should have done something different. But there was nothing I could have done. He had us from the beginning. Her voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. I'm not going to waste any more time on guilt. You would not want that. Mike, you would tell me to stop being dramatic and get back to work. Chun, you would make some terrible joke that would somehow make me laugh anyway. Fernandez, you would remind me that retirement is overrated. And Becky, you would just look at me with those patient eyes until I figured out what I already knew. She stood slowly, her knees protesting the cold ground. They offer me a command, training the next generation of snipers. I do not know if I deserve it. I do not know if I am ready. But I think I'm going to take it, because someone has to make sure what happened to us never happens again. A voice spoke from behind her. They will be proud of you. Ramona turned. Erickson stood at the edge of the path, his hands in his pockets, his face illuminated by the distant base lights. I did not mean to interrupt, he said. I come here sometimes to talk to Mike. Ramona nodded. He was a good man, one of the best I ever served with. Erickson walked forward and stood beside her, looking down at the graves. When the report came out, I wanted to find you. Wanted to look you in the eye and ask how you could let him die. He shook his head. I'm glad I never did. I would have said things I cannot take back. You had every right to be angry. Angry at the wrong person. Erickson turned to face her. My wife told me something was off about the official story. Said the Ramona Delacroix she had heard Mike talk about would never make those mistakes. I did not listen. I was too wrapped up in my own grief to see clearly. We all were. They stood in silence for a long moment, two people connected by loss and finally united by truth. Erickson spoke again. I heard about Ashford's offer. The training program. News travels fast. It is a good opportunity. The teams need someone like you. Someone who has been through the worst and come out the other side. He paused. Someone who knows what betrayal looks like. Ramona considered his words. Is that why you came here tonight? To convince me to take the job? I came to talk to Mike. Erickson smiled slightly. But if I happen to convince you in the process, he would probably appreciate the efficiency. Despite everything, Ramona laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but genuine. Tell his daughter about him, she said. When she is old enough, tell her what kind of man he really was. Erickson nodded, his eyes bright. I will, and I will tell her about the woman who brought his killer to justice. They walked out of the cemetery together, leaving the graves to their silent vigil. The Pacific stretched endlessly to the west, dark and vast, and indifferent to the small dramas of human lives. But Ramona did not feel small anymore. She felt ready. 6 weeks later, Ramona stood at the edge of the Camp Michael Monser training range and watched her first class of students assemble. 12 operators from across the special warfare community, selected for their potential and their willingness to learn from someone whose reputation had been dragged through the mud and restored in fire. Tanaka was among them. He had requested the assignment the day Ramona accepted the position, and she had approved it without hesitation. The young operator had proven himself in the dunes, and she owed him the chance to become something greater. The morning was cool, a marine layer softening the California sun. Ramona wore her working uniform for the first time in nearly 2 years, the fabric strange against her skin after so many months in administrative khakis. Her rank insignia gleamed on her collar. Chief Petty Officer, the same rank she had held in Yemen, the same rank she would hold as she rebuilt her legacy. She walked to the front of the assembled group and studied their faces. Young and old, men and women, eager and skeptical. They had all heard the stories. The sniper who got her team killed, the ghost who rose from the dunes, the woman who brought down a traitor. Now, they would learn whether the legend matched the reality. Welcome to Advanced Reconnaissance and Counter-Sniper Operations, Ramona said. Over the next 16 weeks, I'm going to teach you everything I know about putting rounds on target in conditions that should make accurate shooting impossible. I'm going to teach you how to disappear into environments that offer no concealment. And I'm going to teach you how to survive when everything goes wrong and everyone you trusted turns out to be a lie. She paused, letting the words settle. Some of you know my history. Some of you think you do. Here is what matters. 18 months ago, I was blamed for a mission failure that killed 4 of my teammates. I accepted that blame because I could not prove otherwise. I spent a year and a half behind a desk, wondering if I would ever hold a rifle again. She gestured toward the distant targets. 6 weeks ago, I used that rifle to save 12 operators from an ambush orchestrated by their own commanding officer. I took shots at 800 yards in desert heat with a wounded arm and equipment I had not touched in 18 months. And I did not miss when it mattered. The skepticism in some faces began to shift toward respect. I'm not telling you this to impress you, Ramona continued. I am telling you because the skills I am going to teach you are not just about marksmanship. They are about mental discipline, about maintaining your edge when everything conspires to dull it, about trusting yourself when no one else will. She walked along the line of students, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. You will hate me before this course is over. You will curse my name and question my methods and wonder why you ever volunteered for this program. And when you graduate, you will be the most dangerous operators in the United States military. Not because of your weapons, because of your minds. She stopped at the end of the line and turned to face them all. Any questions? A hand rose from the middle of the group. An older operator, a senior chief with combat deployment ribbons on his chest. Chief Delacroix, he said. What happened to Hargrove? Ramona had expected the question. Lieutenant Commander Hargrove is currently awaiting court-martial at Naval Consolidated Brig Miramar. He has been charged with espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, and 14 counts of providing material support to enemy forces. His trial begins next month. She allowed herself a small, cold smile. I have been asked to testify. The operator nodded, satisfied. The others exchanged glances, processing the reality that their instructor had not just survived betrayal, but had personally brought the traitor to justice. Ramona clapped her hands once. Enough talk. Partner up and prepare for baseline qualification. I need to see where you are before I can show you where you are going. The students scattered to their assigned positions, and Ramona walked the line as they settled into prone positions and began their initial shots. She corrected stances, adjusted grips, offered quiet guidance to those who struggled. This was what she was meant to do. Not shuffling papers, not hiding from a past she did not deserve. Teaching, building, creating something that would outlast her. Tanaka caught her eye from his position and gave a small nod. She returned it. The morning passed in a rhythm of gunfire and instruction. By lunch, Ramona had identified the students who would excel, the ones who would struggle, and the few who might wash out entirely. She made notes and began planning individualized training regimens. She was reviewing her notes when Bledsoe appeared at the edge of the range. He watched her work for a few minutes before approaching. You look good out here, he said. Like you belong. I forgot what that felt like. Ramona set down her notebook. Thank you for giving me the chance to find out. Bledsoe shook his head. I gave you coordinates and a vehicle. You did the rest. Still, you believed in me when no one else did. He was quiet for a moment, his weathered face unreadable. Mike believed in you. That was enough for me. They stood together, watching the students filter back from lunch break, their voices carrying across the range with the easy camaraderie of shared challenge. Bledsoe spoke again. The investigation turned up 3 more operations Hargrove compromised. Assets in Syria, logistics routes in Afghanistan, a source network in Somalia. All burned. All because of him. Ramona felt the familiar weight of grief, tempered now by purpose. We cannot bring them back. No, but we can make sure the next generation knows how to spot the signs, how to question intel that seems too perfect, how to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. He looked at her directly. That is what you are really teaching them, is it not? Not just shooting. Survival. Ramona considered the question. I am teaching them that the enemy is not always in front of you. Sometimes the enemy wears the same uniform, speaks the same language, and calls you brother. And when that happens, you need to be strong enough to do what is right, even when it costs you everything. Bledsoe nodded slowly. Good. They need to hear that. We all do. He walked away without another word, leaving Ramona alone with her students and her purpose. She picked up her rifle and walked to the demonstration position. The students gathered around as she settled into a prone stance, her body remembering the alignment without conscious thought. "Watch closely," she said. "I'm only going to show you this once." She found a target at 600 yards, controlled her breathing, felt the stillness between heartbeats, and fired. If this story moved you, drop a comment about what resonated most with you. Share if you have ever witnessed someone rise from injustice to reclaim their purpose, or if you know a veteran whose story deserves to be told. The round struck center mass. Perfect. Ramona rose and faced her students. She had spent 18 months as a ghost. Invisible, forgotten, written off. Now she was ghost again. The name whispered with respect in briefing rooms across the fleet. The sniper who rose from the dunes. The instructor who would forge the next generation of warriors. And she was just getting started.